Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Michael Fillios, founder and CEO of IT Ally and a CDO editorial board member. And we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Ali Khan, Chief Data Officer at Experian Consumer Services. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's dive right into it. So, Ali, tell us a little bit more about your background and what moved your career in the direction of data engineering and analytics.
Yeah, so my whole career has pretty much been in data management. It's coming up to 25 years now. I started my career as a DBA, and so I've always sort of maintained a very operational focus in everything that I've done. Out of that 25 years, I think I spent maybe the first decade being mostly an engineer and an architect, and then fell sort of accidentally into management. But in terms of why I got into data management, there's two answers. The second answer I didn't realize until I was sort of fairly, into my career, about halfway through. So the first answer is, I was fascinated by artificial intelligence, right? I grew up watching and reading science fiction. And I was planning to be an English literature major, actually, right? And reading and writing is sort of still my first love. But, I went out on a limb and I did computer science. And of all the sort of sub-disciplines, the data-centric ones appealed to me the most. I wasn't sure why at the time. I liked set theory. I was turned out to be much better at SQL than sort of real programming languages. Still not a very good programmer. But I just sort of went with it, and that sort of just became my career. But about maybe halfway through, I really did some introspection, like, why this? Because I was contemplating a career change, right? Do I stick with data and data management, or do I go into sort of broader IT, right? Because I had some opportunities at that time. And I realized at that time, and it was a real epiphany for me, right? That my love of data was really just an extension of my love of books and reading, right? And data for me and data organized within computer systems is just another way of collecting and knowing things. I like to think, back to the science fiction theme, that in an alternate universe, I'm a librarian or an information scientist or something like that. So I've realized that is the true answer. And I think of, I love consuming data in all its forms. I'm always reading, I'm always listening to podcasts, and I'm always working with data. So ending up at Experian is not a surprise, right? I mean, I've worked at different places. Most of my career has been in financial services, but I'm fairly industry agnostic. I really am drawn, to the data, and Experian has incredibly rich data, right? About tens of millions of consumers. And then, the mission, right? And the mission here is an incredible one. And I joined, for that mission, right? Which is around using data to increase financial access for consumers.
It's a great story. Certainly, I can relate myself pivoting as a CFO earlier on in my career to a CIO. So it's good to see that you've landed on your passion, and it's probably a good segue then to talk about your job and time at Experian, given you are a leader in the field of data and analytics, and from what we understand, you're the first CDO for the company as well, and you must have had to build some strong relationships with executives and establish that vision together for the organization. Maybe you can elaborate on how you've accomplished that and where you are in that journey.
Yeah, no, it is an honor to be the first CDO for Experian Consumer Services. This particular part of it. I'm still fairly sort of new in my tenure here, but I think a couple of things are already clear to me. So first of all, this is a data company. It's always been a data company, and I think that one of the things that makes my job a lot more fun and a lot easier is the fact that, that has been embraced across the board. I have worked at other places where I've had, a similar leadership position, but I'm not going to go into details. But there are internal battles to be fought. So for example, should we be truly data centric, or should we sort of still be line of business centric, right? Flipping that sort of model and mindset is a real battle. So here, I've been given an opportunity, a really open hand to define the data strategy, and an incredibly supportive and in sync leadership team, around data and around the power of data to change the mission. So early days yet, really just standing up the department. But the one thing that I will share is, what I decided to sort of make the central tenet for the data organization is around data ethics. I think that is absolutely the most critical challenge and opportunity in data ethics today, right? Experian obviously deals with incredibly sensitive data, right? So we're highly aligned toward protecting that data and treating it with the respect that the consumer deserves. But data ethics is about going beyond that. It's about always doing the right thing. There's a lot of discussion about the I did a big project around CCPA a couple of years ago. And so compliance isn't the end of it. That's the minimal sort of entry, toward sort of being legally, compliant. But data ethics is all about, treating the data with the respect that it deserves. Because, when someone gives you data, they're really trusting you with something that's very precious. It's about, eliminating bias, right? Whether it's in constructing of the data sets or the algorithms, and it's usually the former, right? It's not usually that the algorithms are biased. It's that the data set reflects, an unfair sort of collection of data, and therefore the algorithm comes to some conclusion that is biased. And then even if you've done these things, even if you've been ethical in the collection of the data and in treating the data properly, you still may use it in a way that isn't in your customer's best interest. So that is the central sort of thrust of the data organization here that I'm leading. And yeah, I feel really fortunate to be, have the support of the leadership here to define that. And I think it ties perfectly with our mission of empowering consumers. That's something that's the reason I'm here. It's the reason that I joined the company.
That's terrific. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to hear you mention the whole concept of data ethics. One of the other roles that I play is representing CDO as an SMB or small medium business expert on data. And lots of times when we talk to experts like you that are, in larger companies and have seen different organizational structures, we like to get your input on sort of how that relates to an SMB. And so I'm wondering if you can comment on the leadership required for a data officer to introduce the use of data to an SMB organization, and how, if you're talking to an SMB leader out there, how they can communicate some of the benefits to their internal stakeholders.
Yeah, well, I guess it's sort of oft repeated that every company is a data company these days, or needs to be, and that's certainly true regardless of size, right? Even with Experian, which is a data company and a very large data company of about 20,000 people, the group that I'm in was about 900 people when I joined, so maybe it's 1,000 people now, a few months in. So I was told that it's like a startup sort of within a larger company. And I was a bit skeptical of that because people always say things like that, but it is absolutely true. I will go on record as saying that my boss, Scott Brown, who's Chief Technology and Chief Product Officer, was right about that. And it feels like that. So yes, we're not technically an SMB, but I think a lot of the challenges are similar. So yeah, I mean, I worked at a startup before I came here. I've worked at smaller companies, and I think the advice is generally the same. It's just that there's some things that apply particularly to SMBs. I think the first thing that I would mention, and because this is the great temptation of of builder type CDOs like me, there are different types of CDOs, right? is to not over engineer, right? That is easy to do in the cloud era. So back in the early days of data warehousing, to stand up an environment, you would need servers and a data center and a whole staff of people, and you need to buy software and do all sorts of things. Now a single data engineer can spin up an entire environment in AWS or whatever cloud provider, and so that is a great temptation of people like me, right? And so we have to sort of watch out for that. Second is to be agile, and agile development does apply to data management and building data products. A lot of people think that it doesn't, but it absolutely does. Maybe we can talk about that at some later point. But the way that I tend to sort of advise people in general, and I think it's particularly relevant for SMBs, is to build backwards, right? So focus on value and begin with the analytics first, right? So what is the outcome, right? What is the needle that you want to move at that firm, and really focus on that, and really be really tight with the business and understanding what those metrics are. Then bring together the data. Figure out what is the data that I need to bring to bear to solve that problem, and how do I need to combine it, and how do I need to treat it, and then think about infrastructure, right? Don't lead with that. So I think that's true of any data practice, but I think with SMBs, given the focus on I think cost and on being agile, those points are particularly relevant.
Very well said. Well, listen, Ali, thank you very much. I truly enjoyed the conversation, and I think others will as well. And I very much appreciate your time today. And if you want to learn more about CDO Magazine or view other interviews, please visit cdomagazine.tech. Thank you very much again. Be safe and be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.